Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rock about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And take that away.
You know, that's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed, indeed, indeed. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It is a scientific fact that we are all up in your face. It is time for the one, the only Protonic reversal. Welcome to it. So, hey, we got a great guest today. They're always great guests, you know. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna be overly, humble without merit about this. That's that we have a lot. We talked to a lot of good people here. A returning guest and very interesting fella, very storied and awesome musical discography, biography. Just a downright hell of a nice guy as well, Mr. Jeff Byron. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Conan. What an intro.
Yeah, I guess I could have mentioned any of the bands that you'd been in too while I was was bloviating on.
But really, we're just here to hang out. So
yeah, we're just chilling. Of course, the most famous of which, let's start with the new one, Wavebreaker. So Wavebreaker is the new band. Let's start with that, which is sort of a continuation, if you will, of previous projects. Batwings, Catwings, kind of like a sequel, reimagining a little bit of that. Turbo Lightning, the mighty Turbo Lightning, underappreciated band in the Pantheon. And for a lot of people, best known for the Mae Shi, which kind of cut a wide swath during those oddies. Oddies? Is that a word? The aughts? What do you call the aughts? Yeah, sure. Whatever. I'm not missing anything, am I? That seems like you've got all your production, your
probably 100 other projects, but they're not worth mentioning. Yeah, Mae Shi was the one that people probably would know if they know anything. Those were the days.
Yeah, and for good reason. I mean, you guys hit at a time where there was that kind of brief window in the 2000s where the weirdos were let in, and in a good way. And you guys kind of hit on that and did your thing with it. And then for some people, they probably are not even aware that there are other bands necessarily. Like they haven't necessarily followed along, which I always think is kind of weird, but then I'm also a complete nerd for that kind of thing. But just for the listening audience, can you describe some of what you've been up to musically, not just with bands, but with the composition, that kind of stuff? Like, what have you been up to, Jeff? I don't remember what we talked about last time, by the way, and it's been a few years anyway. I don't remember a single thing we talked about. So
it was probably 2015 last time I was on the show.
That makes sense.
And I'm actually professionally doing the same thing. Last time we talked a bit about being a music composer and writing music for TV and TV commercials and stuff, which is what I do, which is a weird thing for like a punk dude to be doing, but then again, I really love it because I'm still writing, just like I did in the Mae Shi. I'm still writing 30-second songs, and I'm hoping that people pay attention to them. So that's kind of what I do. I teach music too, I just work on projects. I'm lucky enough to be able to work on projects pretty much for a living. And then in terms of rock music, Wavebreaker is the new thing. We call it a new thing. However, we've been doing it for probably almost 3 years now. Writing music, getting it out. It's kind of a different thing. You mentioned it's a continuation of Batwings, Catwings. It's kind of in that it's me and Dana who are doing it, and Clay, the drummer. So it's three of three of the members of Batwings Catwings. However, in terms of what the project is and what it means, it's really a completely different thing.
Hits differently. And I didn't mean to be reductive when I said that. I meant more of a continuation with personnel, and I figured that
Totally.
we would talk that there seems to be an explicit mission statement, might be the wrong word, but there seems to be like an explicit message, like just messaging here, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was a big thing we were thinking about when we decided to, well, make a new band. It was like, what is this thing that we're doing about? And that is kind of that's one of the reasons that I'm excited to be here.
Well, and why don't you tell us a little bit about try that again. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Jeff? Because this is real new as far as the listening audience. Again, you've been kind of percolating this for a while. You've been just sitting on it for a while. There's the songs have been written, but for the listening audience that are listening live right now, this isn't even out yet. But it's going to be, by the time most people listen to it, it will be, right? Is that a reasonable assessment?
Yeah, I sure hope so.
But tell us how it was conceived, kind of top to bottom, and how and why it was delineated from earlier bands and projects, and what led to that decision.
Well, so the Mae Shi was all about, making art and acting crazy and throwing a party. And Batwings Catwings was also kind of like, hey, let's throw a party music. Right. When Wavebreaker, when we realized what we were doing, I don't know if it's not that we're more grown up now, but we realized that there's, and I say this being somebody who's just been a facilitator for all the music. I mean, I'm one white male in a band that is basically, I'm really proud to be able to facilitate a project for two women of color that have the biggest message. That's really my role in the band. And so that's kind of what the band became about. It was like, there's a revolution, let's call it a revolution in our minds, and we need to make the revolution irresistible. And that, to me, is what this music is about. And it's not so the Batwings Catwings, the Mae Shi, Turbo Lightning, those were all projects I was extremely proud of because my ego was wrapped up into them. And I think that Wavebreaker now is something where I can actually take a step back and say, my voice isn't the thing that needs to be heard. I need to amplify and elevate these other people's voices. And so that's been such an amazing experience for me. And that's why Wavebreaker, we're writing songs about these things that we want to see happen, these changes we want to see in the world. We actually have part of the album is given to other people for their, spoken word pieces or their other music that we want to have in there so other people can hear it. We're going to be promoting it in an entirely different way. So all of these things kind of make it a very different project and very different band. And yet we feel like the music is just as fun and energetic and exciting. It's not super angry and punk and political. It's actually fun, uplifting, and we want people to feel inspired. So,
right, like when listening to it, it doesn't feel like you're being attacked with copies of the People's History of the United States necessarily or anything. Like it doesn't. It still has that party vibe in a way that it's fun to listen to. But if you listen to it, you're like, oh wow, that's interesting. That's cool.
It's supposed to be a celebration. I think that's
right.
the way Dana would put it.
And I guess one of the reasons why I'm kind of harping on that is a little bit is because through all the bands, I'd say the through line for most of it has been that there is that kind of air of celebration, even when there's like a somber sort of element or something to it. So the idea of kind of turning that on its head a little bit and being like, yeah, celebration, but what if also protest? Or what if also, abjectly like energizing in a way for like political power beyond just musical power. And of course, it bears mentioning last time you were on, the mighty Dana was also on as well, who's just a freaking powerhouse, like just incredible. Like I'm a huge Dana fan, as you well know.
You got to have her on next.
I was going to say, we definitely should. And it's not often that you see that turn towards like, hey, what can I do to like there was, okay, let's put it this way. So there's a lot of like,
yeah. No, go ahead.
Sure. So I was just going to say real quick to set it up that like, when Donald Trump got elected, there's a lot of like, Well, hey, punk rock is going to be good again. That was political music being kind of the idea of, not that there's anything wrong with the Clash, not that I'm dissing on the Clash or anything along those lines, but like having like kind of a strict idea of somebody sort of, what Sleaford Moss I heard described as like bass and drums with some English dude yelling political stuff over it. And I thought that was hilarious. But this idea of empowering not just women, but like, women of color as well, and coming from that lived experience, I guess I just don't see that so much in punk rock, or if I do, it's outside my area of expertise. So that's a long way of saying, explain to me how Wavebreaker specifically came to be the way that it is, and the story that you intended to tell with that before I soliloquied for a while.
Well, there's a privilege to being able to make, punk rock, to say I'm going to be in a band, I'm going to tour, and I'm going to play parties and punk clubs and stuff like that. In the Mae Shi, it was the year that George Bush was reelected. Could that possibly be? Was that 2004?
2004. Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. So Bush got reelected, and we were on 5RC, subsidiary of Kill Rock Stars. This was the Mae Shi. And Slim Moon, the owner of Kill Rock Stars, sent everybody a mass email. And he was really, this really stuck with me. He was really disappointed in all of the bands, in like that we are people who are looked up to by our, fans, people who love music. And we did not choose to use that influence to get people excited about a different candidate. And we ended up, it was like, we kind of fell short. And I remember I felt, my first reaction was like, well, that's not what music's about. Music is art for art's sake. You can't, make it political if it's not. Yeah. And I thought about that, stuck with me a long time, because I didn't think he was right until I realized that, holy shit, man, what a privilege I have to say that art is for art's sake, and I can separate those two at all. And that's kind of like what the difference between Batwings, Catwings, and Wavebreaker is. Besides that there's different members of the band and stuff, it's like all of a sudden I realized that this is the most important thing. This message is so much more important than the music, I guess. It's the most important thing. So which isn't to say that the music is lacking or anything along those lines, far from it, but it's definitely message music without it being overtly, hey dummy, this is a message. Yeah. Well,
that makes sense.
You know what? I would love it if everybody in the world could just make art and music for the sake of making art and music. I wish that would be the goal. But if we're going to be doing it, we might as well be singing about things that we love and want other people to love too, and things that we hate and things that we want people to know about. So, yeah. So it is a little political. It is a little protest, but we also, we still put just as much time and energy into the music. We've been doing it for 30 years or whatever, or I have. So it's that we knew was going to be awesome. But and of course, music takes on a completely different thing once you're actually singing about things you care about, which I didn't realize until I was a little bit older, because I loved singing about garbage. Like I loved writing music that was absolutely nothing. A lot of that music,
silly things, and
a lot of music,
mythology.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Mae Shi wrote a song about a dolphin. It's like
yeah.
That was a war protest song, actually, Become of the Dolphin. But still, it was like we would often just kind of flip through Wikipedia and go, wow, I think we'll write a song about this thing. Yeah.
So do you find that when writing the music, knowing that you're having these more serious and kind of heady concepts behind it, that like it's carrying this message forward, do you think differently about the arrangement? Like, does it give you pause maybe for...
That's a really good question. Well, like the answer that I have to that is kind of similar to, let's put it this way. I'm one of 5 songwriters in the band. And like I said, my role right now is to facilitate. So I kind of look at, I still want, I don't know if it really does. It definitely affects the structure of the music but it's not like I think about, what's the best way to get people riled up at a protest or something like that. I'm not like thinking about the use of the music in that way.
Sure. Yeah.
We're making music that we think is fun and that we want to play, and the messages kind of comes through, and it's mostly through Dana's voice, and that's where that mostly comes through. And what a powerful thing!
What a voice! Yeah,
to hear
awesome.
from a Filipino woman screaming in a punk band. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, who has the goods, frankly? Who can, like, it's not like
it's fun to watch.
Yeah. I mean, like we're in a situation where the messenger and the music kind of intertwined quite a bit, and whether you want it to be or not, but the idea of kind of having this unified force for the music. I mean, do you think about it even in terms of like, hey, what best serves the lyrics? Like, do you change the arrangement at all in regards to that?
Well, that's also Dana's magic. I mean, her lyrics to me are, she has a way of making great sounding lyrics full of meaning. And sometimes I will try to help her with that, but that's, I mean, it's rare that I can affect the vocals and make them better than what Dana does. So she, like, we produce, we write, record, produce, even master a lot of the stuff ourselves. So a lot of the music production and the songwriting happens at the same time in the studio, in the room that I'm in right now, where we'll be up until 3 a.m. working on lyrics or something.
So, and that's something that you do a lot. You're very comfortable in that process because you do it in other aspects of your life as well. But is that something where, do you ever feel like you get a little bit too in your head on things, or do you ever feel like, okay,
all the time.
like, is this good?
Yeah.
I don't even know anymore. What is music?
I haven't worked with like a producer or even another engineer in so long that I don't even remember what it's like. I would love to be able to just focus on the music. I mean, I got into music production as a necessity. It wasn't something that like I was interested in it, but I didn't really even want to do it professionally. I wanted to write music, but I didn't want to like, operate a studio really. I just ended up.
You didn't have some yearning desire to ride the faders, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I like gear as much as the next person, but yeah, I always wanted to just be the musician. So recording music production was just something that I had to figure out.
Was there ever a moment on the run up to Wavebreaker where you're just like, this party needs to have a theme? Like, did you ever have like just an epiphany moment earlier on?
With other bands or like
yeah, like, meaning, because like, I mean, the big thing, like, we most of the same personnel, right? But you had Batwings Catwings going, and that was a concern. It was had its own audience, had its own kind of modus operandi.
Yeah, most of the differentiation for me was in the projects and personnel, like you said. So Turbo Lightning, a lot of people would get Batwings Catwings confused with Turbo Lightning because it's both me and Dana, and it's Dana's voice and some of my voice. And it's got guitars in it. And most people are like, I can't tell the difference between your bands. But Turbo Lightning had Zach Lewis in it, and Aaron, and that was just for me, the music sounds completely different. But I guess that's just nuance. I mean, I would say that's actually probably the most underrated band of the Pantheon that I can think of. And the fact that I think it absolutely deserves. Yeah, I think Turbo deserved a little bit of a more of an audience than it got. There's another meaning. There's another way I think about some of this music, and it's very egocentric. It's very the reason is because it's all associated with me and what I was going through in my life, and how that changed the music that I was playing on all those things. And most of that is not what Wavebreaker is about. But Turbo Lightning, that was a time in my life where I was still getting clean and sober. So that kind of it was, the music took on a lot of that, even if it's not explicit in the lyrics, which it is. But even if it wasn't, it still had that meaning for me. And that's what most music that I've made in my life has been, just an expression of, you know, whatever my experience and whatever I'm going through. But that's getting pretty philosophical.
Well, it is, but that's okay. You've heard this show. The, and the idea of, you know, with finding your sobriety and the path back to that, it kind of seems like you hit almost like a force multiplier of creativity once you kind of locked back in, right? I mean, it's from an outside perspective, that's what it looked like anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like the story went, I stopped touring and playing with the Mae Shi to get clean and sober, and I almost immediately started up a project with Reagan Farquhar, who is a bus driver, the rapper in LA, and we started a band called Physical Forms, and all of my energy went into that. So it was just like, yeah, and from then on forth, from then forth, like every single day was creating something. I mean, I was writing music every single day.
Right.
So that is really, yeah, that is a force multiplier for sure.
And I don't know why I have video games in mind, but that's what I was thinking of. And maybe it's the whole GameStop economic justice thing.
Yeah, I don't think we need to talk about that. There's enough podcasts talking about.
I can't wait to see the limited series on HBO about this or whatever. Or at very least the episode of Billions where it's referenced.
Crazy.
But I think that it's something that's notable that you know, you said something last time. Sorry, I did remember something from last time, specifically about, you know, kind of the creative process going more into kind of like putting in the work rather than waiting for like divine inspiration to strike, like, you know, instead of like the lightning bolt being hit you or something.
Oh yeah, I wonder if my opinion on that has changed since. It's I love that question. Yeah, well, when you're a music composer, you have to know how to turn it on and turn it off. That's for sure. Yeah, and I actually have little tricks. I have got things that I do to turn it on and turn it off.
Yeah. What's anything you can share?
First, I'll light this candle, and then
right.
I'll clean my room. No, actually, when it comes to music, if I need to write something and I need to write it by tomorrow, or I only have a few hours, then I will think, what's my tempo? Like what rhythm am I working with? I'll start there, and then I'll kind of work together. I'll work towards a melody and work towards harmony and stuff like that.
So you start off kind of with the pacing and the rhythm and kind of work your way up.
This is like a lot of my students ask me, how do I write if you know, I've got writer's block? And something my mom taught me was just set your place up, you know, like get your work tools in order, create the session on your computer, give it a title. Giving things title makes things just flow. I used to, sometimes I would just title something, just any random thing, you know, and then lyrics would come out of that or something. But yeah.
I think that's very interesting because that's something I feel like that's been applied. I've heard that applied to other things that are not music composition and things along those lines as well. But it does seem to sort of like that, you know, 75% of getting there is like getting there, like making sure that, you know, you have this superstructure in place.
Yeah. Another thing that I do with that is I give myself, I allow myself to make something really terrible. I basically say I'm allowed to make something just really terrible. I just got to make something. If I have to force it out, you know, just say like, it's fine. In fact, I'm going to try to make the worst possible music for this. You know, I'm going to go out of my way to make it bad. I think that was something I learned in college, was like writing a paper. How did I write a paper? I don't know. Start by writing the worst paper you possibly can. And then maybe you'll end up writing something good by the end.
I mean, do you ever fail at making the worst thing ever and make something awesome? Or do you think it's usually mostly failure achieved, check mark? It's
a pretty common thing for me to be working on a job. And I'm talking like writing a jingle for a commercial or something, where like I'll spend 2 days writing something that's supposed to be perfect. And then at the end of that, I'll just spend half an hour working on some garbage that turns out to be what everyone likes or something like that. That's often the way it goes.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm dancing around is that, you know, I feel that there's very little in the way of objective truth with music and creativity. But when you're doing compositional work for, you know, for other things, like it's work to order, and someone can maybe have ideas in their head about, hey, I want it to sound like this, and then you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? what,
Oh
like, how do
yeah,
I interpret that?
there's all kinds of like communication issues when you're dealing with people who, especially if they're people who, like you're talking about, like a producer who wants things to sound a certain way and they're using. Yeah, the one I get all the time that I think is interesting is when people say they want it to sound youthful or sophisticated or something like youthful but sophisticated is the one I think of off the top of my head.
Oh, throw a
Can
harp
we
in there.
make it have
What does that mean?
swagger? Can we make it have swagger?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, this is relating this to with the Wavebreaker stuff. It's like, yeah, I do make music and I've got to turn on that creativity really quickly. And Wavebreaker is a thing where we've been working on this album for 3 years. And so we've gone through every iteration of these songs and we've practiced them live. We've played them live. We've like, you know, tested them amongst ourselves and other people. We've gone through different versions of the lyrics. So they are really just still a process, very, very different. And luckily it's like, yeah, like I said, my job in the band is to kind of make sure that things happen, amplify voices, basically. That's what I'm here to do. So we've got 5 songwriters in the band, trying to make that all go together and get all the songs produced and recorded and all that.
Yeah, and it's the end result. Audience on your own composition versus serving the audience in your own composition versus something made to order, maybe, or song replacement is kind of like the most like soulless of that. I feel.
Oh yeah.
My opinion.
Well, here's the thing about being.
Hey, make it sound like this Black Keys song that we won't pay for.
That happens all the time. Or it's like there's a process. It's here's the Black Keys song. Here, we don't want you to sound like this. We make something that sounds original to make sure it doesn't sound like this. And then you go through like 10 iterations of the song, bringing it back to sounding exactly like the Black Keys or whatever. In the end, that's why they wanted the U2 song that they couldn't afford or whatever. Yeah, I have to do a lot.
They wanted that song, but they didn't want the lawsuit. Is what they wanted.
Yeah,
or they didn't want to pay for it.
One thing that took me a long time to realize in that industry is when people are hiring you to create music, they're more often hiring you for your taste and what your creative input is in that way. They're not looking for some sort of technical thing. I learned that a little later when I was writing music for film and TV, because I tried to write something that I thought the director would like, and that was the wrong way about it. I should have just been writing something that made the story better. Like took me a while to figure out that I'm just another storyteller on the team. That's my job, is using music to influence the emotion that you feel when you watch it. Yeah.
Which that's the key to good music direction as well as composition, and I think there's people that have made careers that still haven't figured that out, frankly, but that's neither here nor there. But do you find that working on your own stuff gets affected by that?
Well, it's hard to say yes or no, because I'm sure it does subconsciously. If anything, I think working in music, and particularly this industry, and most of my work is for advertisements, so it's a lot of the advertising industry, and that might sound gross, but in a way I prefer that over the film and entertainment and TV industry, because it's kind of a different thing. But like that work makes it so that when I do have something that I just want to express, when I do just want to make art, I usually don't have any inhibitions about it. It's easy for me to get going really fast. So it's like, yeah, when I do want to create, I know a lot of artists, and I used to be like this when I was a kid. It was hard for me to have like a writing session. The stars had to align the right way in order. It goes back to the inspiration, and also just like, some people think that I can't write the right music until I have the right equipment or something. I need the right tool in order to write.
Yeah.
I need my studio set up. I need the guitar I usually play or whatever. And I think having a job where I am required to write music it means that when I want to do something for myself, there isn't any friction at all. It's just go. All the friction is in my head.
Well, I think back to, it might have been like some documentary or something where Nick Cave, like, he wakes up in the morning, has his coffee, puts on his suit and tie, and then he goes to the piano. And like, that's like and like, sometimes he gets something out of it. Sometimes he doesn't. I just like to envision Nick Cave, like putting on a suit in the morning and then like going to the piano. I'm like, all right, let's see what we can pull off here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that sounds like an awesome job, actually. I'm just going to get you to go play. I probably should do that more. I probably should wake up in the morning and go, what am I going to write today?
So with the Wavebreaker stuff, there's more intent, which isn't to say that the other stuff like lacks intent necessarily, but there's so much intent with the lyrics. Do concepts ever come first, or is it more like the concept follows the creativity with the music and the arrangement when it starts coming into being?
Concept, you mean in terms of a lyrical content?
Yeah.
Dana usually knows what she's going to write the lyrics about. And that sometimes that's part of the music writing process, and sometimes it's not. But yeah. You really need to talk to Dana. She's
we'll have Dana on. The records, I can talk to you guys after the record's out too,
Totally. I think that
I've been trying to, for whatever it's worth, I've actually been trying in the last year or so to up the amount of non-white dude guests.
Yeah, we all need to be pushing towards diversity, that's for sure.
And it's something where it's been not as like, I'm going to be the podcast that does this. It's just sort of like, of course I should be doing that. And like, because I had the epiphany of, I was like, why has the last 20 guests been dudes? That sucks. Like, they're all white dudes.
I mean, I have to say, I was a little self-conscious about coming on your show representing the band being another white guy, because it's like, I actually really wanted to talk about this because I talk about my role in the record. What is my role just in terms of the entire progressive movement? And I think that I'm not going to be a person who says I'm going to speak up for marginalized people. I'm not going to be their voice. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to the other white dudes and say, hey, we got to change the way we're doing things. I mean, that's my responsibility, is to make sure we stop being assholes. I think, like, that's the way I see it. Because
and just more thoughtful.
I'm not gonna I'm not gonna be I'm not gonna be a white knight or whatever. All I can do is try to keep people from being as terrible as they've been through the last few hundred years in this country. So.
But that said, if there are people that maybe listen to your old band and they got a lot out of it and they kind of want to check in and see where you're at, then if you're like, hey, I'm in this awesome band that is doing this awesome thing, that's a pathway in that maybe wouldn't have been there before. And if you're in a band that's not just like, hey, we're making cool music and doing this cool thing, but it's like, no, we're making cool music, doing this cool thing, and trying to advance a cause, like trying to do something bigger.
White supremacy. Yeah, totally. And people listen to the music and go, oh, wow, I didn't know that that was considered white supremacy. And it's like, yes, it is. Now totally. Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about a lot of different things, which is, for lack of a better term, scoldy, if that makes sense, like scolding, like kind of like from a scolding perspective. And I think that that's something that I kind of doubt that the efficacy of kind of being a scolding based economy advances power and advances change. And I think that, again, this is a way larger question that we're going to solve on this show, to be clear. But I think the idea of sort of almost, for lack of a better term, leading by example, and kind of making it like, oh, cool, that's something to think about that's tied to this thing that, like, hey, that's a rad hook. That's a rad part to sing along.
Mm-hmm.
That's an approach that I've got a lot of time for that personally, because I think I would like to see more of that rather than the woke scolding, where it's like, yeah, you're correct, but you're being a real dick about this, and you're not really you're not going to bring anybody along in that way.
Yeah, and that was part of, I think, the inspiration for making a record that was, sounded, I mean, it's more joyous than it is angry protest music. I mean, there's a few songs on the record where we're pretty fired up about stuff, but you listen to it, it's a pop rock record, you know. It's fun.
It is. Yeah.
And it's intended to make you feel appreciative of life and not that everybody who isn't us is doing things wrong. So it's not.
Yeah, and that's it's something that I kind of wish there were more people mining.
Yeah.
Really, like, you know, making it like when I look back on the, you know, these myriads of documentaries about how great the 60s were, the one thing that I've started to notice in recent years is like, oh no, that looks like fun. And like, why is like so much of advancing like important political causes these days like just seem joyous? Like it's sort of like, it's such a drag. not that you should have to entice people with a good time necessarily, and not that I'm like, you know, I have endless eye rolls for the you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll motif as the modus operandi, the only one that works. But I just find it interesting that like we've changed again to this model of kind of shaming people almost in a way like, well, if that worked, cool. But I just don't. I think it just puts people on the back foot sometimes, and it's not it shouldn't be the only tool in the toolbox, I guess is what I'm trying to get at.
I think the way I would probably say this is that I agree that scolding culture is probably not good, but we do need to call things out, and we do need to.
Agreed.
We you know, when I say the words white supremacy, I mean we need to normalize that, and we need for people to hear it, even though that might make them uncomfortable. Like those are important. And I don't think it's really scolding, but it is bringing these things to the forefront so they're not hidden behind, you know, hundreds of years of you know, whatever.
And also to realize that it's not a personal attack on that person, but it's also something that, you know, it goes beyond culturally. Like it's so, you know, pervasive that somebody of a certain ilk, someone that looks like you or I, wouldn't necessarily even know it unless they are forced to think about it.
Yeah. I mean, so one of the things that I learned a lot about this hosting podcast, actually, which is something you inspired me to do a few years ago. I took up the microphone and I started podcasting. I started a few different podcasts and I kind of got addicted to it. And I feel like that is something that I learned doing that and just talking to people. Like you point things out over and over again, and people just start to get used to hearing it. They're no longer foreign ideas. And that's when you can really start to have a conversation about change. Because when you're not speaking the same language as somebody else, then I mean you're never going to agree on things because you're not speaking the same language.
If you don't have an agreed upon set of facts to begin with, you're going to have a hard time advancing anything.
Yeah.
In conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
So with doing the podcast,
mm-hmm.
and what have you learned by being on the other side of the microphone, so to speak, with that?
Oh man, I learned so much about myself and other people and being a host and using my voice, and also just like I mean it's in some ways it's like being in a band, and it's, you know, it's a production thing. This is such a cool show because it's live, it's off the cuff, it's casual, but then it's still traditional in that we starts with a theme song and then there's an opening and all this stuff, and that's so cool. So thank you. I started podcasting because I was interested in a couple communities, and I didn't know how to meet people on them. So I thought I'll start a podcast, and actually I did it with music composers too. It was like I wanted to get more work in composing for film and TV. So I was like, well, I know a lot of friends that do it, so why don't I interview them, and I'll record the interviews and then I'll share them with other people. And before I knew it, I was making friends with all these people that
sure.
I had a network with. Like, you know this, you must know this. Your network has grown, you know, it's huge. You can actually, you know, email your favorite, your idols probably and say, hey, what's up? So that was one of the things that I thought was really special, is that when you talk to somebody, intending to record that conversation and share it with the world, it's kind of a spiritual experience. I mean, you are like, even if you're disagreeing with them, you are meeting them on their level. You're basically becoming peers or friends or whatever you want to call it. And I think that was one of the coolest things I realized. And I was like, man, I want everybody to be able to do this. Everybody who has an interest that they want to share with the world, I wanted everybody to have that experience and be able to meet people all over the world. And the fact that now, we're using Zoom and we're remote, we're not in the same room, everybody can do this. You don't have to live in the same country you don't have to live in the same town as the person that you want to interview, and you don't have to fly to go see them. So now everybody can have those experiences. And that's basically why I built the app that I'm working on right now.
I was going to say, you're giving yourself the perfect lead up because there's all this technology and, frequent thing that I hear from people that are looking to start their own show is like, hey, how, like, from a logistical standpoint, how can I do this? And I think you've come up with a really cool answer that even makes it more democratic in its way, in the fact that like it lowers the barrier of entry so much. So can you tell us a little about this app that you did?
Yeah, so you're ready for Silicon Valley right now. So when I started
we're going to disrupt the podcast economy, really.
We're going to democratize podcasting.
Synergize our whatever. Sorry, go ahead.
So, I'm an audio engineer. It's pretty easy for me to set up a microphone and record. It was really hard to get guests, but the biggest issue with starting a podcast was, do I really need a faster computer? Do I really need a mixer? Do I really need a new microphone? Why can't I just do this on my phone? Why can't I just call somebody up and record it with them? Oh, I guess I can do that with Zoom, but the sound quality is terrible. And there's, a couple other apps they're just really goofy. So I thought we need to make a multi-track recording app for your phone where you can just invite a guest to your call and record it, have it on multiple tracks, be able to do a quick mix on your phone and upload it right away. So it's a push button podcasting solution is what it is. And I did want to democratize. I did want to bring that experience to as many people as I could. Yeah.
Well, and I think back at the various iterations of what I've had to put together hardware wise to do this show, all of which are way more Battlestar Galactica than they are Star Trek. Let's be clear. And, it's such a big part of my life that I invested. I have like a high quality mixer. Like I've got, high quality, this, that, and the other. And specifically that's because, this has become something that's taken on, I've done it long enough that it's become a part of people's lives. And like, there's some stake to it. So it's certainly worth the investment of time. That said, it took me 6 years to buy like a mic that wasn't like a Beta 58, the same one I used for like singing vocals in the band. I was like, oh yeah, I guess I could just ask for this for my birthday, and that would be a pretty good present for someone it's incredibly hard to shop for. And but the thing that always kind of got me when I was starting, I was like, why is it so difficult? I shouldn't have to be examining the Zapruder film to try to figure out how to do this. Like, why is this so difficult? And it always kind of made me think about what do you really need? Well, you really just need if you're an interview show such as this one, you need one person talking and the other person talking. You shouldn't need to buy a bunch of equipment for that. Why is there this barrier of entry for it? And for me, it's mostly been hardware solutions. I have my things at work most of the time, and that works for me. But I wouldn't recommend it to anyone because I'm like, this is crazy. Like what I do is freaking crazy. Like it looks like the TARDIS in here. There's things like hanging down. There's like cables. There's ooga. Don't do what I do. Don't do it.
So many podcasting setups look like that, and they sound great, and that's awesome. But really, you need two people talking, and you need a way to record that, and then you need an easy way to publish that. And so, streamlining all of that was my goal, and being able to do it all on your phone now.
That's the thing that blows my mind is that you're able to do it all from like one mobile device, which my battery is almost completely dead, like an idiot. So otherwise I'd be doing it on my side for this too. Sorry.
Well, I mean, the people think, oh yeah, but you can't use your phone. It's going to sound like crap. Well, it's not the best microphone in the world on a phone, but it's not actually that bad. It's not as bad as you would think because it doesn't, what you normally associate with the telephone sound is the limit of the telephone bandwidth, and the BandcasT, the app, is not recording over any sort of medium like that. It records directly to your phone. So two phones talking to each other, it records locally. So you get perfectly good, clean sound, even with a small microphone. It still sounds really good. And then some post-production processing on the end of it to make it sound a little bit better. Recorded directly to your phone, so no internet drops or anything too. So
which is that's another key thing of latency, whatever. If you're like a parent, your kid gets on, is trying to do Minecraft or whatever it is the kids are up to, and suddenly like you start getting like a robot voice and stuff like that. I think it's interesting that you were able to sort of solve that kind of by going back to basics of just like, okay, that's what do you need? Well, you need two people talking.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Why don't we just use the thing that people talk on?
So now there is
what a concept. This guy's actually the thing that people talk on.
I have something to say about that, because one of the things that has been really interesting in doing the testing of this app and getting people to record podcasts on it is, man, do people open up when they forget that they're recording? And it's really easy to forget that you're recording if you're on the thing that you talk on all the time. Because people just think I'm talking on the phone. It's like, oh, by the way, I'm recording this conversation, so you know. It's like, okay, then we go off and talk about, I'm talking to a bunch of I'm talking about people. I'm talking to people that I might want to invest in this project, and they're telling me their stories of investing, and like they forget that we're recording because it's so natural, it's so transparent. So you're right about that. Why not just use the thing that we're used to talking on, and then it's and I hope that people use it. I mean, here's the limitations to it, right? You when you record something like this, it's not too hard to make it just immediately publishable. But then you don't really get the theme song, then you don't get the bumper music. It's like there's all the stuff that goes into a production of a podcast that you're starting.
Post-production.
Right. So with BandcasT, you are able to download the individual tracks, so you can edit and mix professionally if you want. I normally don't talk about this technical stuff, but since you do the Protonic reversal, I feel like people know what I'm talking about when I
this is definitely this is the audience for it for sure.
Right.
And I think it's interesting enough that you please, by all means, hit me.
Yeah, so you can access those individual tracks if you want to mix professionally and edit. But the thing that I discovered was that people actually like still having the casual conversation and uploading that. It's like the new app the new social media that everyone's talking about is Clubhouse right now. I don't know if you or your listeners know much about Clubhouse, but Clubhouse is just an audio chat app. It's really like you open
the old party line telephone.
It's like the old party line. It's like the AOL chat for voice.
AIDS sex location. Yeah.
Totally. So you go into these chat rooms and you just have casual conversations with random people, and then because they're turning into a type of social media, you get followers and you follow other people and people become influencers, and there's all of that. But there's a new interest in casual chat, and people have. And so we're tapping into that a little bit. Is you record a conversation on your phone, you share it with the world, and it's like you find people on the other side of the planet. They're interested in what you're talking about, and that's almost a different thing than podcasts. That's just recorded chat.
It is, and it reminds me of just. You would have blown my mind years ago if you would have said that there are people that were interested in watching other people play video games on the internet. And I'm like, really? Yeah, totally. Really? Who would do that? And then it turns out, lots of people actually want to do that. And there's a whole art to it. And there's a, even if it's not your thing, it's sort of like, I get it, where it's like, oh no, that's cool. Like they've developed like a language and a lexicon that they use for that in a way that interacts with that community. And it just sort of reminds, like, it made me realize that my initial reaction to that was sort of getting the initial reaction to starting this podcast. Like, whatever. I don't listen to podcasts. Okay, fine. Do you not own a TV too? Cool. Can't wait to hear about it. Can't wait for you to tell me about it. And I think that that's something where you can really delineate between people that are kind of stuck in their ways, maybe, and people that are sort of like open to new ideas. And I think it's interesting that I mean, I'm amazed that like the app is great. I'm amazed that something like this hasn't existed before. Like, frankly, I'm like, this seems so freaking obvious, but it's not
Well, there's a reason. I mean, there's a reason. It was really, really hard to build.
Yeah.
No, it's the reason that it's hard to build something like this is because, well, for a few reasons, but one is that it's illegal to record somebody without them knowing. So
there's legality issues with that.
Apple and Google and Android make it really difficult to record on your phone if it thinks you're having a phone call. It just blocks you. So that's why the app itself doesn't work that way. It works more as like a voice memo app that syncs with somebody else's. So it's kind of unique in the technology. And that's one of the reasons that, and there's so many ways for audio to fail. I mean, most podcasters I know don't even like recording on a computer because they don't trust computers because they crash. So in order to put something on
I
your
back
phone,
up everything in 3 places immediately after every show, just just
so
for that same reason.
I'm recording this on my side just because I know what it's like to have to when you lose content like that. So
it's a power outage. Hey, like whatever, Oh my God.
It's art. In fact, we had a power outage the other night while I was recording, and luckily we didn't lose anything because, I mean, when it's hard to prepare for any of those failure modes on a phone. That's what we call it, failure modes, when we're building software. But like, there's so many things. Like, you could get a notification, you could accidentally close the app, you could open up YouTube, you could get you could accidentally hit the Siri button. All of these things that you do on your phone. Most people are usually like multitasking. Like, imagine trying to multitask on the computer that you're recording or the device that you're recording on. Like, if you're a recording engineer, you're like, no, don't do that. Just let the machine
let the thing do the thing it's intended to do. Yeah, exactly.
So, there are people who are going to use BandcasT and think like, well, why can't I watch YouTube and host a podcast at the same time?
And check my Instagram messages and like also tweet out some it's like, okay, well, sure, if that's okay, sure.
So it was the challenge was making something that worked on a phone and then worked on a phone the way people use phones, because people don't think of their phones as recording devices. But
and that's something I think that is incredibly smart about it, because the predominant mindset with technology, and this is straight up an Apple thing, and this is especially it was a Steve Jobs thing of like, no, don't do it that way, do it this way. We want you to do it this way. So this is the way you will do it now. Like almost this like authoritarian sort of like, this way's better. Do it this way. Mm-hmm. And expecting the user to modify their behavior because of that. And then you had the visionary part of it kind of went away, and just the third authority figure, no, do it this way, stuck around. So the idea of actually accommodating, knowing full well that people are going to do what they do, it's a mundane genius in its way. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh yeah, of course they are. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. So like really quick, the way the app works is you open the app and you send an invitation to whoever you want to be on your podcast, and then you click record and start recording. And I think one of the really important use cases for this is going to be established podcasters that have their workflow and their setup. They need to deal with guests. It's just a breeze, because there's going to be a desktop version of BandcasT that you can run on your studio machine. Then all you have to do is, send a link to your guest, and they don't have to deal with a microphone or headphones or, logging into some site that breaks down every time you try to record with it or whatever. So,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
And you know what? I mean, like, all of this, like, I love plugging BandcasT. I love plugging the thing that I'm working on, but really, like, it's being able to for me, there's nothing more valuable than giving somebody a platform to talk with, especially when they're, somebody who maybe doesn't get to talk very often. And I think that's kind of a moral to what I'm doing here, as well as what I'm doing with Wavebreaker. And so I feel like I'm really lucky to be able to do that. I'm really lucky to have created something that is a creation tool itself. And I'm looking forward to seeing what people do with it. Maybe people will do something very different than record podcasts. I don't really know. I hope so.
You never know. And it just reminds me of the fact that when quarantine started, all these people kind of started up these shows that are basically like Instagram Live. It's like two people talking on Instagram Live, just literally talking to each other, even with wait, hold on, okay, okay, they're on now. Oh, hey, what's going on? Like the first 2 minutes of each one is just a horror show of like trying to get the other person to connect. And
I love it personally. I love it.
No, it's I actually find it very charming, and maybe that's something that other professional podcasters maybe wouldn't feel, but I was like, no, this is adorable, because like what is once they lay into it, and it's like, no, you're just doing a podcast between two phones is what you're doing, and this is great. Or it's not. Most of the time it's
there's a thing that comes up on your show often. I hear this topic come up on your show, which is it's getting easier and easier to make and publish your own music. Like that's like we in a way we don't really need the record labels anymore. We don't actually need any of the distribution platforms. We can actually create in our bedroom and upload to Spotify. It's all it's all DIY now. Your show is DIY. It always has been. The more we see the creation to distribution, the creation to publication tools become something that everybody can do. Like I am so excited to see what people do with this. I mean, some of it I don't love. Like, I don't love the fact that a lot of musicians are just Instagram musicians now, and we don't actually have them. Like, there's this new type of musician that doesn't write music. They never play live. They just like play 15 seconds at a time on Instagram, and they get hugely popular somehow. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, but
that's hard not to shake your cane at. I agree. That's something that's like, okay, fine.
But I'm the old man there. I mean, maybe that's an entirely new genre that we've never seen before. It's going to be groundbreaking in the future. Is this type of thing? Who knows? And we all have to be open to it all. Otherwise, we're just going to be those old guys that like that crusty old music.
Yeah, I mean, like, whatever. Like, I'm the guy that's still producing, for the most part, like a 2-hour show for every one of these. But the whole point of it is it goes in depth. That's the point. And like, I feel like there's, like, I don't apologize for it. It's like, that's the show. You don't like it, listen to something else. There's plenty of stuff out there. Like, I can't. Whatever.
you probably know this. This is another thing I learned as a podcaster. I'm jumping around like crazy, but it's kind of fun. So
you've heard the show. Yeah, it's okay.
The thing I learned was like the longer you talk, the more true everything gets. It's like the truth comes out. Once people get comfortable when you're talking. I'm like this, LT. I host a podcast every week, and for the first 5 minutes, I don't know what I'm doing. It's like I need to be warmed up, and then I like actually turn into a host. And like
once you get into the rhythm of it, you get past that initial exactly.
That's why these hosts have these spiels that they do at the beginning. It's not branding. It's so that they can get in the zone.
It's like setting your workstation up to record. It's like you're doing the ritual to do the thing, and like there are times where not to interrupt, sorry, which is exactly what I did, but there are times I'm like, I don't feel like doing this. Like, I don't feel like doing this right now at all. But then like I just go through it, do the intro, and then by the time I'm done with that, I'm like, you know what? I feel like doing this.
Yeah, totally. And
there's nothing to do with the guests. To be clear, this is all Conan stuff. This is all stuff within me.
Well, it probably happens more with the guests than you realize, because a lot of guests, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people. I have a podcast that's in a very specific industry. And it's and I'm talking.
Do you want to actually mention? You've never actually mentioned my name, I don't think.
But my podcast, Keyword Crypto. Yeah. Oh no! Yeah. So for the last few years, I have a podcast that is about cryptocurrencies. It started in 2017, 2018, and it was a podcast I started because I wanted to learn about them. I didn't know how to. It seemed like it was really hard to learn on the internet. So I just started interviewing people that I met, and we've interviewed like the founder of Ethereum. We've interviewed a bunch of cryptocurrency founders. That's been a pretty cool project for me personally, because it entered a world that I was unfamiliar with, and it is so outside my bubble. My like progressive leftist bubble just walked into like libertarian citadel or whatever, and I'm like, holy shit, they don't want me here. So we quickly became like the only leftist podcast in cryptocurrency. And not only that, but we were actually kind of an not an anti-cryptocurrency, but we were an extremely skeptical and irreverent voice in crypto. So so that's what happened there.
Crypto stuff takes itself so seriously. Like it's just like everything is so serious with
or it's all memes. It's one or the other. It's like,
or it's just like complete nonsense. Exactly.
Or it's just a dog, a doge. It's so that was interesting for me. And what I was saying before was that we were talking to a lot of people who were not used to being personalities, like a computer programmer who has basically just been coding for the last 10 years to make the perfect crypto wall or whatever isn't really set up to socially lead people necessarily. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're really good at that. And that's something that social media really helps with, like Twitter and Instagram and stuff. But you give somebody a microphone that isn't used to talking and they really need to warm up. Sometimes it takes them a while to get to the point where they're actually like talking from deep down. So that's cool.
Yeah, and that's something where I feel like that's the perfect kind of thing for a podcast, though, because it's for the world at large, it's a niche interest. Like it's something that people don't necessarily know a lot about. But I've heard about that. What is that? Let me hear about this. Like it's something that you can learn.
Crypto.
Oh, I was thinking about your podcast about crypto, but yeah. I guess either. But the idea that you can kind of enter that world through a way that is comfortable to you, and learn something new about it. And I mean, ideally, like not to turn it back around, but I hope that's what people find with this show as well. Is to there's a certain ethos, a motif. There's certain things that I like to talk about with people.
Yeah,
and some people would maybe have Jeff Byron on and only talk about the Mae Shi, and I love the Mae Shi and want to talk about the Mae Shi, but I think all this stuff is fascinating. I think the app is fascinating. I think that the fact that you're using podcasting as basically an opportunity to kind of increase your own knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a podcast, you are basically inviting the world to your educational experience. I feel like
absolutely, I would agree.
Creating social networks, like the social network is you and all your guests and everyone who helps you make the show, and that is a thing. Any type of social network, the kind of purpose of it is to bring like-minded people together, or not like-minded people, bring them together so they can hopefully have a discussion about what they aren't minded about.
Yeah, have some good conflict and have some bad conflict.
Yeah, I mean, at least in the world of crypto, there were very, very few. Like, if you were like a progressive left-leaning person and you walked into that world, you'd be like, just get me out of here. Like, now there's actually a way that you can find other people that share the same political beliefs and stuff like that.
There's a multiple former guests of the show. I won't out this person specifically, but is super into crypto, and the thought has occurred to me that I need to hook you up because this person is also done some interesting music stuff as well. So I don't know if should I speak so clandestinely about this? It's not like I'm saying that they're into like weird sex stuff or anything.
No. I think some people like to stay relatively anonymous about it because either they're embarrassed about the fact that they're interested in it, or they just don't want people to know that they've got stashes of money. Yeah, but usually that's not the case. I mean, somebody who is interested in, no, I don't feel like it's I don't care about keeping it private personally, but yeah, but I mean, I have an entire podcast about it and I share it with everyone anyway. I think for a while it was whenever you're doing something, I mean, it's related to the world of finance, which was something that I always was disgusted by as a young person, like you're going to go trade stocks, like get the fuck away from me. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Right. But and this is related to the whole the
Reddit thing.
Game stuff. It's like, you know what? Actually, this concept of Bitcoin, which I have lots of opinions about Bitcoin, but the concept of it is to take the power away from the people who've created the money, which may or may not be a good thing, may or may not be, we don't know. And it's to allow people who actually use the stuff to make the decisions. And that, I think, is a really good question to ask. So it's like, it's about bringing power to the people. Power to the power. A Mae Shi.
I was going to say, which is a great segue back over to the Mae Shi. Well, I also think it's like, is file sharing a good thing or bad thing? Well, it's a thing that has to be dealt with. Is it a good or bad thing? That depends on, where you're coming from. File sharing, I'm talking about everything. And, file sharing was a big deal, big hot topic 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But like streaming services, right? Is Spotify a good thing or a bad thing? Well, bit of column A, bit of column B. It depends on who you are. It depends on what your worldview is. And it's changed things. It has changed the way people listen to music. And is that a good or bad thing?
Yeah.
Well, again, depends on where you're coming from.
Just having the conversation is good, in my opinion. Like, even questioning these things is the problem with our world and our country, is we just haven't questioned whether the systems that we have are good or bad. And then when you look at them, it's like, actually, the police are fucking terrible and they've never been good. We should have gotten rid of them a long time ago. Like that, we need to question them. Like questioning the Fed or the central bank. Like, sure, like we had to Occupy Wall Street or whatever, but we never even thought like, well, what if we made our own money? Like, or this thing is, at least in crypto, there's this idea of let's bring financial services to people in the world who haven't had them. Maybe people in third world countries or whatever. Now, personally, like, I have opinions about people's so-called altruism in a place that are also gambling to try to get rich,
Right. So, it's still a profit motive in that altruism. So it's not that altruistic.
But the fact that we're having the conversation about people even needing financial services, I think is really cool. And that, like, now that's even something that people are trying to do. Yeah. So, yeah. And lots of topics on this show. It's great.
Yeah. I was gonna say, well, you're a fellow who has done a lot of things, continues to do a lot of things. So it's like one of those things where I want to touch a little bit of all of it because I think it's potentially interesting. I think that look, with the Mae Shi, I feel like part of the appeal of the Mae Shi was like you kind of never knew what was going to happen next to a certain degree. Like there's a pop sensibility to all of it, but it was sort of like.
Yeah. I used to call it surprise music.
Yeah, I was gonna say it almost seemed like it was a surprise to you guys as to what was gonna happen next, like the audience.
It was. It seriously was. Well, we had this, Fugazi would do that thing where anyone in the band could start playing a song at any time, and we did that same thing on stage where there was no set list. It was basically if you wanted to play the next song, you had to start it, or you needed to somehow get somebody to start it, or shout at somebody. Yeah. So there was a lot of spontaneity, and of course, we would screw up all the time and have to figure out how to make these mistakes just part of the show. And there's one time that we had this song called "Do This." We do this all the time. We do this all the time. Like it literally, the way that that song came about was. We were playing a show at the Echo, and in the middle of the song, Brad, our drummer, just gets up, tosses his drums over, and starts screaming, "Do this! We do this all the time!" My brother and I are looking at Tim, who's the bass player in the band. We're looking at each other like, "What the heck is going on?
What's happening?
We better run with this." So we started shouting too. We're all running around the entire place, not playing instruments anymore, just screaming, "We do this all the time! We do that!" After the show, we were like, "Brad, what happened?" And he said, "I got tired and I couldn't play drums anymore, so I needed to do something." I didn't know what to do. So all I did, he needed water. Like he didn't know, he had to stop playing his drums. He was too tired. It was a sweaty, gross room, and he had to jump up, and that was the way he dealt with it. And I think that's just kind of how we dealt with a lot of life situations. Totally, it was a fun band, man. Really frustrating too. I mean, because that as fun as that system sounds, man, it's full of failure as well. I mean, how many things did not work out where we'd all start different songs at the same time?
It's free jazz.
Yeah, right. And then we'd yell at each other afterwards. "No, you were starting the wrong song. No, you were."
Right.
A lot of passive aggressive dealing with each other.
But it made for a very fun experience, and just kind of seemed, to the outside, it was like, wow, I don't quite know what to expect next, but I bet it's going to be pretty cool, kind of mindset. Even if you got, and most times you did, but even if I saw some of those moments where you wouldn't land it, but it was like, it was just like such a quick recovery, and just like, well, was that planned? Was that it? And then after I got to know you guys, like, oh no, that definitely wasn't planned. Like somebody screwed that up. But, but from the perspective of just your casual listener, they're maybe not going to pick up on that.
Yeah, well, and they either weren't going to pick up on it or they were and they were going to like it. I mean, it's kind of like it's when something that's genuine. I mean, I'm thinking dog-faced Fleetwood Mac guy on the skateboard. Like
Totally.
you see that happen. I think that especially in places like the UK would see us perform like that and not really care. And it was like, whoa, well, this is really fun. Like, I think there was some, when you show up to play a show and you say we're having a good time, it's okay if we make mistakes. Everybody in the building can make mistakes. It's okay. Join us, that sort of thing. At least that's the way I thought about it. Maybe that was just my excuse for not being very good at playing the instrument.
Well, but you had intent behind it, and like that was that real sense of adventure, but also sincerity with it was a very vital part of what made that band what it was, and what made it kind of interesting in a way that maybe sonic hallmarks of other bands around that time, you'd be like, oh yeah, that sounds like this and this, but it's like it kind of hit a little different because of that, because it was all you guys, and you had this Fugazi-like mindset, I guess we'll attribute to them, of anything can happen. We don't even know what's going to happen.
Come up with it. No. Well, that lasted for a while, but I think the one truth about playing music and being an entertainer, and, you might not think of yourself as an entertainer if you just play in a rock band, but you are. The one thing about it is that eventually you do have to do the same thing over and over again. And that's something that Slim Moon actually taught me too. He was like, eventually you got to do the same thing. He's like, imagine you went to go see Nirvana and Kurt Cobain didn't smash his guitar at the end of the show. You'd feel ripped off. Like, you got to do it.
It's part of the show. It's like Alice Cooper getting beheaded, it's part of the show.
Yeah, totally. And eventually the Mae Shi had a show like that where we actually played the same songs every night. But the cool thing about that is that we did have a show put together. The spontaneity was in how people reacted to what we were doing, because we had props and we had, synchronized dances and costume changes and stuff like that. And I know that stuff all sounds, goofy and kitschy, and it was, but at the same time, we were like really kind of down to earth and lo-fi about it. I mean, we'd pass out all our instruments at the end of the show.
Yeah. So. I mean, like real just chaos theory in action to a certain degree. I mean, sometimes to a great degree, and sometimes of like, oh wow, okay, that went a different way than I thought it was going to, but in a way that was infectious, and I don't mean that as in like a deadly disease, but I mean like infectious, the enthusiasm.
So. I mean, like, yeah, I hope so. It was fun. Well, I mean, we often would sing all at the same time too, and that's pretty infectious, especially when you're just doing an a cappella. Like, what punk bands do a cappellas really? And we would do that, and we'd run out into the audience, and I played wireless, like the auxes, and so it's just, I'll try to be as inclusive as possible. I grew up at a time where music was very intimidating. You would go to the Jabberjaw and you'd look up and you'd see the lights and the heat and the band, like it would be really intense. And there was a real separation between me and the audience and those bands that I idolized. And I think that in the Mae Shi, we really wanted to remove that, make it, we're all in the same place. Dan Deacon does the same thing, where he plays on the floor and he gets everybody around them to have the same party that he's having. And I think that, we were just doing that same thing. That was definitely a part of the aughts, the mid 2000s. That was part of the way you made music at the Smell and Pearspace and those places.
Yeah. And I think, bands like Lightning Bolt and stuff kind of made people start thinking about, what a performance is, and like, how can you subvert the dominant paradigm in a way that's like cool and interesting?
Yeah, that's the creativity is the name of the game. And fortunately, like so many of the other artists that we were making music with and so many of the venues they understood that, and like would let you, play a show on the roof or whatever, or, play at the back of the club.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Can you? I really don't remember
like that now. I wonder. I mean, it's because of COVID and because of the the inability to travel and tour. I'm really curious to see what the future is going to be like in that regard. I know that there were a couple teams working on making mobile apps for like house shows where like if you're a touring band, like if you're a touring band and you need a place to both crash and play and make like, $200 or something like that, you can join this sort of social network of people who put on shows in their basements. I don't know if that ever got built, but it seemed like stuff like that was going to be something that people could use in the future. I mean, when I first started touring, we didn't even have cell phones. So like, we had to bring like a Thomas guide with us and stuff. That's how
you had to bring the Atlas, I don't get,
and like hope that how many times would you show up to play a show at a venue and there would be no one there, and then somebody would come out of the back and say like, oh yeah, I thought that the show was canceled, sorry. Like, well, we just drove to Lincoln, Nebraska, and now here we are.
Well, all right. Yeah, well, and in the same way that Ferris Bueller's Day Off is a completely different movie with cell phones,
Totally.
like in that same sort of way.
The technology could actually be very conducive to like DIY and indie music. I think like right now, everything that we've talked about on this show is about democratizing something, making it something that the entire world can use. I don't see why that has to change for, I think I see a place for that in independent music more so than ever. Yeah.
Maybe when quarantine's over and we get past this COVID stuff, maybe we can develop the what is the Tinder plus Airbnb of house shows? Like, I don't know how to phrase this, but
yeah, well, it's not going to be for a while now, unfortunately. But
I think you will see it in non-traditional spaces and like cafes and basements and stuff before you see it at larger venues. I think for better or for worse, unfortunately. But that's a different story.
I think that we go through periods of open-mindedness as a culture and what we can tolerate. And I'm really lucky that period of time in the mid-2000s, people were very open. At least a lot of the people that we were performing for, a lot of people were really open-minded to doing something a little bit different. And I don't know if that changed. I didn't notice as much of it in the 2010s, but right now, once we can actually start playing shows again, once we can start performing, I think people will be so starving for live entertainment that it'll just be like, give me anything. Like, oh, you've got an acoustic guitar. Just let me hear you play it. That sort of thing. Yeah. I mean, if I were to hear somebody busking in a subway station, I would be really stoked right now.
Well, I think you'll see people engage in a far deeper level than maybe they would be before, and at least for a while, until we're able to be like, oh yeah, I'll try to make it out.
Just not have the judgment. I mean, like a band like the Mae Shi survived on people like not judging us. I mean, a lot of people did judge us, but when you allow somebody to do what they want to do, even if you don't like it, but say, hey, they're doing it, that's good for them. They've got a finished product. They've got a performance. They've got a live show. I don't like what they're doing, but I'm really stoked that they're growing. And I think that I would love to see more of that. I'd love to see a healthier, happier DIY music space, but I am all sunshine and rainbows, I guess.
Can you tell us a little about the records? So like Terrorbird, for instance, like tell us about where the band was at with that. And that's a wild record. Like even knowing, because I came into you guys like before, I think you had CDRs of To Hit Armor Class Zero, if I remember correctly, when we first met. And I was like, right. These guys, all right, what are they up to?
Yeah. This is really fun to talk about. It's like telling war stories or something.
Yeah.
Where were we at with Terrorbird? So Terrorbird was the first record that we made together as a band with Brad. To Hit Armor Class Zero was actually recorded with a different drummer. I think his name was Jerry. Like I don't remember. I honestly don't remember our drummer because we like knew him very briefly. He played on the recording, and then I think he was suspected of like some major theft because he split town, and like it turns out there was this huge robbery at a school. Anyway, so
okay.
Yeah, there's another story there. But anyway, but Terrorbird was hold on, let me transport myself back. We made it in my we recorded a lot of it at a house that Ezra was renting. So Ezra and Brad were still at Cal Arts. They were studying at Cal Arts. So we did some recording there, and the rest of it was made in my bedroom in Koreatown. I lived in this house with like a bunch of Koreatown and Silver Lake people that I ended up hating living there because it was so scenery. But I would set up, bring out these big card tables or these, those big folding tables, and I would line my room with it. And we'd have 4 computers, like desktop computers that we'd set up, and each computer was running a different type of software, and we were putting it together piecemeal. And so that record was just all over the place. And all those songs were like, man, we've got like a 30-second thing here, we've got a 2-second thing here, we've got a 3-minute long song. And it took us a long time to put it together because we didn't really know what we were doing. We were kind of making it up as we went along. I mean, we were using I think Tim's computer was running Pro Tools with like a 002. I was running like Nuendo or something weird like that. We had Ableton Live. It was just like we just had all these tools and music. We had a million instruments in the band, just trying to do it all. Ezra had his Buchla synth. So Ezra's father, Don Buchla, was an innovative synth designer in the 1960s, and Ezra would tour and play with this modular synth. Modular synths are pretty common now, but in 2003 and 2004 they weren't really.
Definitely were not at the time. Yeah,
and
I remember being like, "What is that?"
Yeah, it was an amazing sounding thing. It sounded like the 70s, 60s, but it would break like every other night, and we'd have to like put it back together every show.
Because it's sort of like what was meant to be in a pristine environment and not meant to be like in a punk rock show, basically.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Not to be in like a sweaty, damp environment with people jumping on it. We recorded, the guitars were done in the closet. Well, the cool thing about that is we were making music for. One thing I remember is we were making music for our friends. I thought that was what made it really special for me. It wasn't like we had a band and songs and we were going to make a brand and we were going to take, photos and we were going to send it to every, music magazine. I mean, we did that stuff, but it was more like, we want to make sure that everyone coming to the show is having a great time, and we want to incorporate all of our friends. And we actually ended up making a DVD with like 30 videos on it that we, hired our friends to make. We asked our friends to make animated videos and homemade videos, and we put it all together. I mean, it was kind of a ridiculous thing that we ended up losing a lot of money on because we had Kill Rockstar release it. But like, it was all about incorporating as many people as possible. Just like the live show was about bringing people up on stage and stuff like that. I think that's really what Terrorbird was about, was finding our audience. I mean, we had the same people would come. Same people would come to all our shows, and they were all of our friends. So we were really lucky. We were really lucky to have friends that liked our band.
Well, and it's something where it makes for, I think it makes for an interesting listen, even if you didn't have that history, though, because it's got that. I guess the disingenuous way to say it would be like ADD sort of element, but it jumps around from like idea to idea, and even just the repetitions is sort of like, oh wow. Mm-hmm. And to me, it was like, that's great because it's repetitive and it's repetition, but there's things that are different about the repetitions, and like that's for me, it's like that's like, I mean, that's a product made for me, like clearly, where it's like, oh, of course, I'm the guy for that. Yeah,
we would write sequels to songs and stuff.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That. Yeah.
And that's very much stuff for the people that it's for. And I think that's something that when people would latch onto it, they would latch onto it hard, and it would be something that would mean a lot to them.
Yeah, it was like we had inside jokes, or we were making musical memes for people. Little things like that.
The musical memes of the Mae Shi. There you go. That's the book.
Totally. It would be little themes and things like that. I mean, we have an album called Heartbeeps where there's like 3 or 4 songs that are titled Heartbeeps on it. Like they're all different songs. They have the same title, and there's it's
incredibly confusing.
There's some things that sound similar, and it's art. It's allowed to be confusing. Writing sequels to songs using the exact same part from another song. Like a lot of the ways that we would write music would be either rip off somebody else completely, be like, there would be times where like Tim would say, "Hey Jeff, play like, Hot for Teacher on guitar." And I'd play it, and I'm like, I play it all wrong, and I'd be like, play, and then Tim would be like, "No, but that's good. Do that instead."
Yeah, but that's awesome. Whatever you just did is great. Yeah.
And like that, there was a lot of that. There was stuff that was stolen. good artists borrow, great artists steal. So a lot of stuff was just plain up stolen, but then we'd steal from ourselves. If there was a part of a song that worked really well or that I really liked, I'd have no problem starting another song with the exact same part. And then when we play it live, it's really fun because people who know the songs, they don't know, like I'll start a song and they still don't know which one it is.
Right. You're like, well, it could be that, but it could also be this other one too.
Yeah, totally.
And then I think it's something that the Mae Shi managed to pull off something pretty unique, which is a relatively major lineup shift without really changing the core principles of what made the band cool in its way. It kind of just sort of directed towards different ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that looking back at how that band developed in that way was really kind of weird because it wasn't just that we got a new
I didn't understand it at the time. At the time I was like, what's going on? What?
It was really strange. Like for me, like it didn't make sense. Like the idea of changing members of a band but keeping the same name, that was like something that like a band like I don't know, like Boston would do or something like you know, like someone that really needs their brand name. Like we were a band on Kill Rock Stars. We didn't need our brand. I mean, the name was important, but it was more like it was a weird thing for us to do. So Ezra quit. He didn't want to play anymore. It was so we went on this kind of year-long search to find a new vocalist, and we ended up working with our best friend John. He was at every show. He was like basically our biggest fan, and that was kind of the joke, is that we asked our biggest fan to sing in our band, and that. But the really weird thing about that transition was that we made a new record, and it wasn't on 5RC. It wasn't on Kill Rock Stars. Instead, we released it in Europe. We released it ourselves in the US, and we released it on Moshi Moshi in Europe and the UK. And for them, it was like a debut record, and they promoted
it was like the first record because like, hey, there's this new band called Mae Shi, and they sound like this. Yeah,
and that's the way they promoted it because nobody would have known our other stuff, and it was with a different singer.
Yeah.
So we would go over to Europe, and we got we got much better known in Europe because we had a couple songs and commercials and stuff like that. Like just "Run to Your Grave" was the song on our record that people seemed to know, and that was interesting because we'd go to Europe and it was like we're a new band, and in the US people know, like, you know us from the Terrorbird with Ezra singing, and then we'd go to Europe and all of a sudden we're like a different band, and everybody thinks it's our debut record. And nobody knows any of the old songs.
Right.
So that was...
when's that one coming out? That's from the first record, dude.
Yeah, totally. And they'd listen to it and they'd be like, his voice is squeakier than this guy's, you know? It's just like...
Yeah.
But I at the same time, it kind of just fit with the weirdness of the Mae Shi anyway. Like we'd play shows in the US where we'd have 6 people on stage because we'd be playing with, you know, Corey and Brad and Ezra and John. And like, it would be a mess. Towards the end, we hired a manager. We hired a manager at a pretty big artist management firm, Network, and he because we were getting popular, you know, he thought that, you know, a major label was going to sign us or something like that. We had a poppy, crazy sound, and that was really interesting because he tried to turn us into a concept, and that was really hard. He was like trying to put us into a box, you know.
Yeah.
He actually told us, like, hey, when you guys play shows, maybe you should just decide on one singer. Because people don't know what to look at. You know, people don't know what to pay attention to. Instead of you guys all trying to steal the spotlight at the same time. That was a pretty weird time for the band. But yeah, we made that transition, and unlike...
Pitchfork liked it when that really meant something, you know, like that was something that got some people in the door that maybe weren't in there before, you know. I remember I was stoked for you guys when that happened. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, that's got really good reviews on that record, and then the some of the popularity in the UK was great. I wouldn't call it popularity. It was kind of like all of a sudden we wouldn't be playing to no one anymore. That
professional curiosity. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but more so than that, we had just had a home there. We had a record label. We had people to take care, that like people to help us book a tour, and like that was really, really neat because we're just so used to. I mean, we're an American punk band that we're just like, we've resigned to the fact that we're going to do everything ourselves. Kind of the way that I still make music today. It's like, it would be great to work in the studio with a producer. I just don't think it's ever going to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of the same thing with the band. And we started to, you know, we never had a tour manager or anything. We always did that ourselves. We'd have a driver, but no tour manager. No, those were fun times, man. It was really hard going to like traveling that much. Well, what happened was we were going to stay on 5RC in the US, but it didn't look like we were going to be able to tour because of issues with the band and people's work schedules. So we're like, you know what, we're not going to tour. We're just going to release stuff on the internet and occasionally put out videos. And when
which as a concept is rather prescient for those times, considering look at today. But yeah.
We would have been fine today. But Kill Rockstars basically said, well, if you're not going to tour, we can't put out your record, which totally made sense. And so we decided to do ourselves. And then John joined the band, and it turns out we were touring anyway all the time. We would be gone, months out of the year. We'd be on the road, and and that's when totally. And that just got to be totally crazy for me, because it was personal time in my life going through that and trying to put on a really fun, joyous show every night when I'm depressed and I actually am not enjoying it. It was an unsustainable thing for me, and it got to a breaking point. And finally, I left the band, and things kind of fell apart, unfortunately. But we're all friends now.
which to a certain degree was almost like, that's like Malcolm Young and Angus Young quitting AC/DC. Like, how does that work?
Well, that was kind of funny, because so in the end, it was like a brand. So by the end, by the time I left, there was no more original members in the band.
Right. like a Starship or something.
Yeah. And
wait, no, Starship had the one dude. I'm trying to think of
Grace Slick, I think, right? She was always there, but
she was there until like the early 90s, I think. But I think the one guy, anyway, whatever. But we all know what we're talking about. But that was kind of when I left. It was no more original members, and then John and Bill and Jacob, they started playing as Signals. They're like, we're a different band. This is called Signals now.
Yeah, I mean,
okay, cool.
Yeah, totally. And Signals put out some awesome music too, and they kept on playing shows and stuff like that. And eventually, John did Signals as a solo thing. I mean, I kind of wish that it could have kept going. I feel like, I don't know, a lot of people probably feel like this with their music projects, but it's I feel like when do creative projects ever really end? They never end for me. Like, in my head, I'm still writing Mae Shi songs. So
So and this has been great. It's been way too long since I had you on, so I'm glad we got the opportunity to do this. I feel like we've talked a couple times, but I was like, oh, but he hasn't come on the show. And so the fact that we're able to do this and tie it in with some new music, which I'm very excited for people to hear and to be engaged with, is all the better. And actually, I guess before all that, how should people prepare themselves for Wavebreaker? Like, should they be saving things on Spotify, Bandcamp? Like, what's the rollout method here?
Glad you asked, because we have a very different approach to promoting this record. So again, it's very easy to make music yourself and record it and publish it and get it out there. It's very, very hard to get people to care about what you're doing, because there's so much of it everywhere. And the thing is, it's like to put out a record now and tell everybody they need to pay attention to it. It's just like, are we really going to go through this all over again? Are we going to pay thousands to a promotional company to send it out to college radio stations? Are we going to, send out, 7 inches and promos and stuff ourselves? Like, what is going to be the process? Are we going to try to get on Spotify lists? Are we going to have a TikTok campaign? Are we going to do that? And it's like, what we need to do is we need to figure out who is actually going to enjoy these songs and how they're going to be used. And with the content the way it is and how they represent change, I think what we're going to do is we're going to try to kind of give these songs out to organizations that need music. Like Dana works for an organization called Skate Like a Girl, and Skate Like a Girl, where they work with young people and they teach people how to skate and stuff like that. They always play music all the time. So we're basically going to say, like, just, excuse me, hit my mic. We're going to say, take this music, like, you don't have to play it, but like, we want to make music that supports your cause. We want the music to show up in a different place. And I know that's very risky because you have to promote music as a product, unfortunately. And in order to do that, you have to find the market, product, market, all this stuff that we all hate, right? We all hate thinking of our music as a product, but trying to get it to the people who are going to like it the most. It seems to me that the traditional ways of doing that are either too hard or too expensive, and they aren't going to serve the purpose that we want the music to serve anyway. And so we are going to try some different avenues for releasing it, for getting it out there, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, we're talking to other organizations. Dana works for a nonprofit up here called Save the Redwoods. They're
great one. Really great nonprofit. Yeah. And I knew of them before she started working there, and I was like, oh, that's awesome.
If we can get to more newsletters and blogs and stuff like that are for causes like that, it's kind of a different thing when you say, okay, there's this band that's putting all their energy into protecting this thing, or raising money for this cause, or whatever it is. We're playing, benefit shows, or, that kind of thing. It's all of a sudden people who were not normally interested in this rock music might say, like, oh, this is cool. This is really different. Mm-hmm. Bring people in here. We're still going to get people who are interested in music through their Spotify playlists and stuff like that, because we're probably still going to have to do some kind of promotion there. But, and then other than that, it's like, and this is something I tell a lot of my music students. I teach adults now. I teach at the Academy of Art in San Francisco, and a lot of my students ask me, like, how to get their music out there. And the one thing I keep on saying is, I don't know. It's always changing. Like,
ask again next week. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the more creative that you can be with getting your music to people, the better. Because 1 year ago, nobody thought that you could promote a band with TikTok. It wasn't a thing. And like now, all of a sudden, we've got all of these different mediums for delivering music to people's brains. So the more creative and unique that you can, the more creative and unique ways that you can imagine getting music to people's ears, like, the better your chances of finding people who genuinely love you. And so that is kind of the theme for getting this record out. It's not, we'll probably do a limited run of vinyl and stuff, and we're probably going to hit up college radio stations as well. But I think it's going to be more about finding those nooks and crannies where our music maybe serves a different purpose or reaches different people, and hopefully can benefit some of those marginalized groups.
Well, and that's a lovely thing. I was going to make a joke of some kind that can be exclusively released through moveon.org petitions and resistbot, but I'm not in any way, shape, or form want to denigrate what you accomplish here. Wonderful. That's lovely. That's a very cool thing to do. It's a very unique thing to do, and I don't understand why more people won't or don't do it. I don't know if it's a won't or don't.
Well, I think that, well, like I said, earlier in this podcast, creativity is king, and it always will be, and it always has been. Sometimes it might not seem like that in whatever you're doing. It might seem like the best approach to something is to do it the way other people have been doing it. But you're always going to get more attention for doing something different. I guess the only thing is that you risk a little bit more. I'm not sure.
No risk, no reward.
No risk. Go big or go home.
So I guess last thing here with the show is just hand question, like the last question. Did we do this last time? I can't remember if we did this last time or not. Is just why do you do what you do?
Well, So, yeah, I guess I wasn't prepared for that question. It's funny, like, someone like me who has so many different interests and different projects in my hands and so many different things, to ask me what I do is like dividing by zero. It's like, oh crap, where do I begin? Why do I wake up in the morning? It's to move the needle on things that I care about. It's to work on work on healing myself, unlearning a lot of things and learning new things, and doing that every single day, and helping other people do the same thing. That's why I do what I do, really. I mean, why do I make music? Why do I make software? Why do I teach? It's all to both learn and teach and love everyone. That's what it's for.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the show, my friend. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thanks, Conan. That was a lot of fun.
Won't be as long as an interval for next time.
Yeah, totally.
Too.
Next time you got to have Dana on. Yeah.
I was going to say we'll have Dana on sooner rather than later. I've actually thought about that independently of you suggesting it.
Yeah.
By the dubs.
Talking about Wavebreaker, I'm not going to be able to do it justice. It's mostly she's the one with a real voice in the band. So, but yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Conan. That was great.
You planted some seeds, and I'm eager to see what fruit grows from them, because I think it's really great. Thanks so much, sir.
Have a good one.
Take care, brother. Oh, there he goes, Mr. Jeff Byron. Let's hear some tunes. Let's hear a couple of these Wavebreaker tunes, huh?
the church up. Rip off the bandages, rip off the dance floor. Spin up the D, drop and drop to Olympia to witness the spectacle. Never to the epicenter, everybody, everybody, everybody listen to the messages. Broadcast, provincial transmission, say power to the power. Oh, power to the power to the, yeah, power to the power. Oh, power to the power to the, power to the power to the people, to the people, to the people, to the power, people to the power, people to the people, to the power, 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 to the power.
All right. So that was a block by Mr. Jeff Byron and his various bands. We had Power to the Power by 2 by the Mae Shi. Before that, Run to Your Grave, also by the Mae Shi. Terrorbird and Hllyh, specifically. And before that was 1,000 Volts. 1,000 Volts by Batwings Catwings. The often forgotten about band kind of in between. Perfect Swell by Turbo Lightning before that. And then Decompose and Silence is Deafening off of the upcoming Wavebreaker record. So there you go.
Test. Can you hear me now?
Name of the show. It's Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Welcome to it. Thanks for listening to it, is what I mean to say. Sorry, I dropped my headphones here.
We come to the close of our broadcast day.
Find all things Jeff Byron on this thing called the internet, if you've heard of it.
This is my farewell transmission.
The app is public now.
Is the app public now?
Sorry, yes it is. I don't
Signing
know why.
off.
I think it's actually cool as hell.
Mr. and Mrs. America, all the ships at sea.
Go use that. Don't do it.
Anyone within the sound of my voice.
Name of the show is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal.
50,000 watts of power.
It airs Thursdays, usually 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific on Radio Nope. Say yes to Nope.
Ionize the air.
This has been another quarantine edition. Protonic. ProtonicReversal.com for the archives. Patreon.com/ProtonicReversal to support the show. $1 a month, early access to the episodes. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding.
Can you hear me now?
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Out on Route 128.
Stay safe out there.
In the dark and lonely.
Take it easy.
I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? 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 See you on the radio. And that snare drum and that drum roll means we've got a winner. If you're the fifth caller, or any caller at all, welcome to my top 10.
I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on Earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. There is no special girl! It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency,